The iPad Pro from 2020 got a lot of flack for being just an incremental upgrade. But with iPadOS 15 making zero difference to the iPad experience, M1 iPad Pro, I'm looking at you. Should you just get this one for cheaper instead? Now let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, the new iPad Pro with the M1 chip might be up to 50% faster than this A12Z iPad Pro. But in practice, several reviewers have pointed out that the differences in speed are barely worth a mention. And that's because the iPad Pro was already insanely fast. Now I know that benchmarks don't tell the whole story, but take a listen to these numbers. It scores 4,639 points for multi-core and 1,118 points for single-core. That's a number Android is still trying to catch up to. And the processor inside it is basically 2 years old at this point. And with iPadOS being incredibly optimized, it is going to be for the next few years to come. Speaking of the next few years, this thing is probably going to be supported all the way to iPadOS 18 or 19. Oh, and this video was edited on the iPad Pro. The audio which you're listening to is as picked up by the iPad mics. Nothing which I throw at it can slow it down. The only thing which can is Google Meet, but that's probably Google's fault. Hey Google, if you're still listening, stop crippling apps for the iPad. The cursor works sometimes in docs and slides, and it doesn't other times. Seriously, it's just a mess. You can have your iPad Pro all the way from 128 gigs of storage to a terabyte, all paired with 6 gigs of RAM. You also have the choice of Wi-Fi only or Wi-Fi plus cellular. You've also got Apple Pencil support and can hook up a keyboard with a trackpad to pretend to get real work done. There's also a single USB-C port to help with that. My biggest annoyance is that the predictive text belt in the bottom takes up significant amounts of room and fouls with the controls for any video conferencing app. Thankfully, this seems to have been fixed with iPadOS 15. Now I hope that Apple fixes its horrible autocorrect with iPadOS 16. Also, there have been a couple of odd bugs where I could not swipe up on the lock screen to unlock the iPad, but those were few and far in between. With that out of the way, this display. It still is a great one. Yes, it is LCD and not mini LED or OLED, but Apple's color calibration still reigns supreme. This makes for a great video and movie watching experience, and the quad speakers just add to that. They might not be as good as the Tab S7 Pluses, but they're just short of it. I've watched many movies, including Tenet on it, and I just love it. Add 120Hz refresh rate for buttery smooth activity, and that's really all I want in a display. You'll take a couple of days to start noticing it, but once you do, even A13 iPhones will start feeling slow and choppy. The peak brightness of the display stands at 600 nits, and I never found myself going above 30% indoors. And True Tone. You may like it, you may not. Just remember to turn it off when you edit a video, Quinn. The next big thing is battery life, which again is great. I use my iPad for everything from school to play to watching videos, and it consistently lasts me 2 days on a single charge. Even on more intensive days, I never had to plug it in before bed. And when you do plug it in, it takes around 2.5 hours to go from empty to 100% with an 18-watt charger that is included in the box. This comes along with Apple stickers. It does charge faster with Apple's own 30-watt charger though. The iPad Pro has cameras too. It's got 2 on the back, a 12 megapixel regular and a 10 megapixel ultrawide, with a LiDAR scanner on the back and a 7 megapixel one with Face ID on the front. These are incredible cameras for a tablet, and honestly, these take better photos than my phone sometimes. Video is where Apple is always killer, and it's smooth, steady and sharp. I mentioned LiDAR, right? It helps in augmented reality. I had an incredible time playing Angry Birds AR and taking scans of my room with Canvas, and promptly forgot about it after a month. Still, if that's something you're into, you'll have a great time. All this is wrapped up in an aluminium jacket with plastic cutouts for the Apple Pencil and the antenna bands. It still baffles me how crazy thin this thing is. Sitting at 5.9mm in thickness and having flat sides, this lightweight marvel feels more like a slate in your hand than a piece of technology. And this slate comes in two colors, a silver and a space grey. Coming to the question I asked at the start of this video, should you still consider the 2020 iPad Pro in mid-2021? Well, I'll make it simple for you. If you don't do any pro stuff like video editing and audio recording and just want a nice looking iPad, you should just get the iPad Air. And if you're open to spending big, you might as well get this year's iPad Pro for a bit of future proofing. But if you're in this tiny niche where you want a little more than the Air, namely the 120Hz refresh rate and Face ID, but also want to save some cash, the 2020 iPad Pro could just be the right one for you.